and the journey to London, and the sweat on my grandmother's throat. I remember it because it was the first time I felt neither indebted nor childlike, as if the whole kindly legacy that was my parents' had been removed from the equation, and left me freshly sprung on the sofa, in the heat of the evening and the presence of death. Defiant of death, but somehow courting it too. Now and again my grandmother would wake up, look at me, smile vaguely, then sleep. The Buddhist stories I was reading that night were about discipline and faith and letting go of the things that are liable to pass. There is the man who grieves so much for the son he thinks has died that he refuses to accept, years later, the man who returns and calls him father. Do not cling so hard to your own version of the truth, says Buddha, else you will fail to see the real truth when it comes knocking. There is a story of teacups. The student asks the master why Japanese teacups are so delicate and easy to break. The master tells the student that it isn't that the teacups are too delicate, but that the person who drinks from them is too heavy-handed. It's not for teacups or grass or mountains to change, says Buddha. It is for us to adapt to what is. Do not clutch. Do not judge. Let pass. Everything is impermanence. It wasn't at this point that I saw through your gauze of life, though. Actually, far from it. In my grandmother's hot, silent room, nothing had ever seemed more permanent. When I was a child, I had played on the floor of this room, shifting tiny figurines of soldiers, horses, and goats around invisible territories. I was ringed by the chocolate-brown velvet sofas and biscuit-brown velvet chairs, and the standing lamps and occasional tables, and the smell of burnt honey that had knotted even into the carpet, the caramel carpet. This is how childhood comes to me, in terms of sweet food lavishly spread, uneaten, slowly going to waste. Nothing had changed since those days, except that everything had degraded, and 2 decades of light had beaten the colours back a shade. But here, the little change only proved the lack of any dramatic one, and it was the same with the dog. The dog that had been here when I was a child was dead, but here was its offspring, lying in its shadow by the rockers of the chair, just as always. Don't your senses lead you to admit that nothing has ever been less gauze-like than this great wall of reality we're faced with, day in and out? In any case, at one point, I got up and poured some iced water for my grandmother and turned out all the lights in the room, except for the lamp next to the rocking chair. The pool of sweat at the base of her throat had dried up, and her skin had flattened a tone. And I mean it this way, like a piece of music, gone off key. Her eyes were open, and she'd taken my hand. "You'll grow into yourself," she said. And it was the first sentence she had put together for hours. "Grow into myself," I replied. "Yes, in spite of everything, we've always looked poor, our family. It's the big bones and height and these dirty tans we get, but your mother became quite beautiful in the end, and so will you." "Yes," I said, though I wasn't sure I agreed, either about my mother or about myself. "Have you fed the dog?" "Yes, Nana, don't worry." "He gets manipulative if he's not fed." "Really? What does he do?" "He plays mind games. He gets witty." "How so?" She closed her eyes and shook her head faintly. "But it's okay," I said. "I've fed him." "Where is he?" she asked. "Down here, by your feet." "He's all right?" "He's out like a light." "He's a light?" "No, he's asleep." "Asleep?" "Yes, fast asleep." Then her brow crumpled, and the feeling was that she'd lost her footing suddenly and tripped another yard down towards death.